Hello again, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the podcast. As usual, we've said something amusing. We've said quite a few amusing things off podcast. Maybe we should do like a. Some people have actually said we should do an outtakes, but I don't think we. I think it would be a bad idea because it would not go down well in certain circles, I think. But anyway, we're here. We're going to be talking about this. Ralph's wearing a particularly fantastic jumper for those of you who are not watching.
It's Armani, huh?
Yeah. You're missing a treat. You're missing a treat. So anyway, yeah. Obviously, this week, tariffs came up.
What happened? I missed it.
Yeah. I know it's easy to miss these things. So anyway, so Trump introduced a raft of tariffs, and it didn't go down particularly well with the markets. A lot of people were panicking in the build-up, but then when they came in, they panicked a bit more. So Ralph, do you have any opinions on this?
Sorry, guys, I'm cracking up. Yes, I just might, actually. Funny you should ask.
Yeah, I thought you might.
There are lots of things here. Most of them are not funny.
Right.
I think I'm reacting here almost like in a giggly mood, because this is just too much mayhem and too much catastrophe to internalize without refuge to a sense of humor. But let me first of all summarize where we are. I know everybody kind of knows that, but just to make sure that we're on the same page here. So Trump levied a raft of tariffs on everything and everybody. Now, we know, of course, that Trump likes tariffs. We've known this for a long time. I mean, since his first administration, he's basically said that tariffs are a good thing to do. One thing which we all need to remember as a preamble, so to speak, before we get into the detail here a little bit, is that Trump doesn't understand how tariffs work. This has consistently been in evidence since his first administration, and it is still very much in evidence, especially now. Now, Trump believes, he's genuinely convinced of this, and he can't be persuaded that this is not the case. He believes that a tariff is a sum of money which a foreign government pays the US Treasury. That is why he keeps saying that tariffs are the best of all worlds. You protect your economy and you get paid for it. That's the sort of thing which he keeps saying. And this doesn't make sense to anybody who doesn't understand that he believes that this is a sum of money which is being paid from an external source. But of course, we all know this is not the case. A tariff is a tax. A tariff is simply something which artificially increases the price of goods, of imported goods, and the excess over the market price needs to be found by the importing company somewhere in working capital and then transferred to the treasury. So this is a tax on your own people, and it is not an additional source of fund which is externally sourced. It is, of course, a source of fund just like a tax is. I'm not saying this is not going to mean that the coffers of the US are not going to be increased by this amount of money, but it is sourced from the domestic market participants. Everybody knows that. I just wanted to make sure that we all remember that Trump does not know this and he does not understand this. So what he did, and therefore he believes that tariffs are an excellent thing to do, and he has now generated a situation where where tariffs are being levied on every country in the world, pretty much. Now, let us move on to just highlighting perhaps some of the tariffs which you have already seen, but I have a list in front of me here, just to few highlights here. European Union, there is a tariff now of 20% on European imports. The famous one, which has been commented on in the press a lot, is that there is one on Vietnam of 46%. And this is also famous because it has been highlighted by journalists. There are also tariffs on, I'm reading this off a page, otherwise I would forget, on the Heard and McDonald Islands and on the Svalbard and Jan Mayen Islands.
Mm-hmm.
What are these islands?
I don't know, but they sound money-grabbing to me.
It's absolutely marvelous. So the Heard and McDonald's Islands, these are basically 2,500 miles north off the coast of Antarctica. It is completely barren and uninhabited, but a bunch of penguins apparently lives there. I'm sorry, this is not, I didn't discover that. The journalists have discovered this. And when the journalists talk about this in articles which you see in the press, then often the article is accompanied by a photo which shows a colony of penguins. And as of course we know, having seen these photos before, the penguins tend to sort of stand around and look in every which direction.
Yeah.
So in terms of when you see this photo, it kind of looks as if the penguins go, what just happened? We've been slapped with tariffs, mate.
Yeah.
So there's no human-made economy here. The penguins have just been slapped with tariffs, and now they can't export fish anymore to the US, which they didn't even know they did.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to become more informative now.
Good.
I promise.
I'm glad you flagged that. Yeah.
Well, it is. There is a point to this, to bringing this up. It's amusing, of course, but there's also a point which I'm making. The other one is Svalbard and Jan Mayen, which is actually the opposite of this. This is close to the Arctic Circle, and it's also completely barren islands where no economic activity is resident. Now, the reason that I make this joke is because it is amusing, but also because it highlights something. It highlights that the Trump administration have not thought about this in any much detail. They have allowed a spreadsheet to do the work and willy-nilly believe the answers of this spreadsheet. There was a territory identified by the spreadsheet known as Heard and McDonald Islands. The formula which they used, which they indiscriminately applied to the data which the spreadsheet had, spit out the number 10%. And now we have the situation that a 10% tariff is levied on a country with no economic activity.
Yeah.
And so you might now wonder, well, if that is possible for a bunch of penguins, how much can we believe the other numbers? How much do the other numbers make sense? And indeed, this would be, or is, a pertinent question to ask. Because if you look at this, then you will find that not a single number here makes any sense at all. This is not a deliberation which is rooted in any type of economic sense. I mean, there's no economic theory behind this. But there is a formula which they used, and I'm going to read out the formula to you, and this also has a point, I promise you. This is the formula they used. It's a ratio, A divided by B, that type of thing. So I'm just going to read this out to you. The formula is delta tau sub I equals x sub I minus m sub I divided by epsilon phi m sub I. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm impressed with that. I mean, that's non-trivial. Not anybody can do that. There is a lot
Yeah.
of stuff here. There is sub-indices. There are Greek letters you've never seen before. There's something called tau that may be tariff, but I don't know. And this is just really, really good stuff. I mean, people who come up with a formula of that complexity, well, they know what they're doing. Is the subtext. That is precisely what they want you to believe, that there is science behind it, that there is a ratio in the reasoning behind the application and the calculation, the determination and then the application of these tariffs. But if you, of course, look at this and you know what the symbols stand for, then any complexity which you might think resides in this formula melts away like Antarctic ice under the feet of the penguins, which this particular formula taxes.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this a lot, by the way. I'm not going to let go of the penguins in this particular commentary. So, I mean, back to something which hopefully is informative. This delta tau sub I, that just means this is the change in the tariff, which they put on something. In the numerator, we have something which is called x sub I minus m sub I. That just means the exports of the US to a given country minus the imports from that country. So if the exports are smaller than the imports, then we're running a deficit. It's just simply a deficit or surplus calculation here.
Yep.
So you identify whether you have a deficit or a surplus with a particular country, and then you divide the magnitude of this by the imports. Is it? Yeah, by the imports from that country. Now you may now ask yourself, what good is this? And it's true, it doesn't actually do much other than maybe identify the relative size of the deficit or surplus which you may run with a particular country. But that's not very helpful. It's not informative in the context of determining a tariff, because let's remember what this formula is supposed to do is it's supposed to calculate the additional tariff that they wish to put on a particular country. What this formula actually calculates is simply the percentage of the deficit which you run with the country expressed as a percentage of the imports. So that has nothing to do with tariffs at all. A tariff is something which is designed to increase the price so that you reduce the imports to your country, and that's the protectionist element, of course.
Yep.
But they actually use this formula, and it's not that they likened it to a tariff. That is the tariff. Whatever this formula spits out is the tariff which they put on a particular country.
Well, now, they did reduce it though, because they're being kind, right?
Yeah, but that's a completely arbitrary thing. I mean, some of these numbers are so high that even they would probably think, well, if you slap like a 20% tariff on the penguins, they might actually rebel. So let's make it 10. If you put 150% on Vietnam or something, that might not look very good, so let's halve it. And they did halve it. I don't know why they did that. It's just a completely arbitrary thing. But anyway, it's important to realize that this formula does not calculate the tariff. It just calculates something else. Now, moving on now to another aspect. President Trump was very proud of the fact that these are reciprocal tariffs. And to quote him, I think from memory, he said, reciprocal is very simple to explain. They do it to us, we do it to them. It's very simple, he said. What simple it may be, but sense it does not make. If that was the case, that it was reciprocal, well, why do you need a complicated formula to calculate anything? Just look at the tariff which another country imposes on you and equalize it. That's it. Done.
Because that really is reciprocal.
That would be reciprocal, yes. But this isn't reciprocal. Let's just look at some of the numbers. European Union, 20% additional tariffs, incremental tariffs. What I should say is a 20 percentage point additional tariff on what Europe does. The average tariff which Europe has on US goods is 2%, not 20. So there's nothing reciprocal about it. And if you actually go through all the other countries, which I haven't done, but I'm referred to an article which I read, then none of them are reciprocal. So this entire activity was pulling the wool over some people's eyes, trying to blind people by science, trying to say that we have a complicated formula here, which, by the way, as an aside, they didn't even work out themselves. They asked ChatGPT to do it.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, this is another aside. They ask LLMs, not just ChatGPT. If somebody noticed that this correlation in the numbers with this particular formula, they put in a prompt into all the known LLMs, and the LLMs came up with this formula, which in economic theory that doesn't exist. I mean, in terms of how to work out tariff, that makes no sense. So anyway, so let's move on. So these tariffs are not reciprocal. They are not calculated in a sense, in a way which reflects economic theory. And now we have it. Now we have these very substantial tariffs on every country in the world. They also they are not proportional, so to speak. We have a 20 percentage points increase on tariffs in the European Union, and we have a 50% rounded 46% increase on goods for Vietnam. Now everybody knows immediately that the volume of trade which the United States does with Vietnam is not going to be in any way of similar order of magnitude than the trade volume which they do with the EU or with China. And so it looks weird to put a tariff on Vietnam. Is it really the case, one wonders, that the United States needs to protect its domestic market against the onslaught of imports which are coming in from Vietnam? Is that really true? So what is happening in Vietnam? Where they do T-shirts. Well, T-shirts, that's a very interesting commodity, and they do trainers. And so they sew up trainers and then they export them to the US. But these trainers are basically Nike. They are US companies which outsource their manufacturing bases to low wage countries. And now they are slapped on with a tariff. So this is not even protecting the domestic industry, because it directly harms a US company. So you can see that it is impossible to poke holes in this, because once you stop poking holes in it, you have no substance left. This is completely erratic. And one economist said that the speech which Donald Trump delivered, and I quote it sort of, was the most economically illiterate speech he has ever heard in his life. Now, I'm no economist, so I take it from him. Sounds reasonable to say that. Coming back from it, we now have a situation where we have all these tariffs. And I was talking a lot about the fact that this administration doesn't appear to be beholden to economic sense, reason, or even understanding, but we are where we are. And where we are is going to be important for the future of the economy. And so maybe I'll stop here and let you get a word in edgewise, but I would certainly, I think what we need to now talk about a little bit at least is what is the economic fallout going to be for the United States and for the world.
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, I was just going to ask, what do you think the impact is going to be on the United States? I mean, yeah, because I think the thing is, I'm getting a word in edgeways. So no, I mean, it is shocking. The tariffs are huge. They don't seem to have any real basis in reality. I think that people were worried beforehand. They're now, and you saw the the dollar weakening, markets weakening, everything, weakening in the build up. And then we've had the actual announcement, and then things have got worse. So, I mean, he's saying that, there'll be a little bit of a short period of adjustment, uh, and everything will be fine. We'll be on track. Best economy in the world, etc. But it doesn't seem like it's going to be like that, because this is the other thing as well. Just to emphasise the fact that it's not all these countries paying America money. It's Americans paying the tariffs themselves as either individuals. Like it's like when if I ordered a T-shirt from America, from an American company, and it was coming from America, I would probably have to, but when it gets here, I have to pay an extra 20 quid or something just for the T-shirt. So the T-shirt might be 5 quid, but I have to pay, the postage, and I then have to pay tax or something on it. So, that's just a very anecdotal way, so it's not American. They're not paying the tariff. I'm paying the tariff. Same thing for the companies as well. So the companies are paying the money. It's not anyone else. And, I mean, I don't know if we'll be able to cover it in this chat, but the problem is that even if, let's say, he takes this money that the Americans are paying themselves, and he dishes it out and calls it, here's a check for you all, stick with it, it'll be okay. They're effectively paying themselves their own money. And it was like, I made the analogy with quite a famous gruesome film called Hannibal, where at the end, Hannibal Lecter, basically he got this guy at a table, and he was preparing, a dish, and which basically it turned out, sorry, it's a bit shocking if no one's ever seen it, but is that he was feeding Ray Liotta's character with his own brain. So he'd basically taken the top of his head off, he removed his frontal lobe or something, and he was cooking it in front of him and then fed it to him. That's what it feels like in terms of, the way that Trump may potentially, reformat this, like to say, oh no, look, you're getting this money, we're giving you this money, this is great, this is where this proves I'm right. But in actual fact, they're just paying themselves their own money.
Absolutely.
But anyway, yeah.
Well,
So
well, I can't believe that maybe at some point in the past Trump might have eaten his own brain, given the intellectual quality of this process, which we have seen here. But the impact of it is going to be dire, potentially, for the United States. Because of obvious reasons. I mean, you just mentioned it. I mean, obviously, what is happening now is that all the goods which America imports from basically everywhere in the world, including the poor penguins, is going to increase in price. And this price increase is not going to happen next month, or it's not going to filter through slowly. It is instant that the companies are going to increase the prices. A often quoted but important industry is the automotive or automobile industry. So every car, no, not every car, every imported car in the United States, probably now already, certainly tomorrow, is going to cost 25% more. And that is reality.
I mean, that's huge. Huge.
This is a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And this is, in fact, reality. This is not in any way theoretical. So you have this instant price increase, and this is money which the market the market participants need to find somewhere. The companies need to find it in their working capital and pay it to the treasury. But of course, they are going to increase prices, and that's how it works. And so the consumer pays this particular tax. Normally, what is happening is when a country imposes tariffs on another country, then its currency appreciates against that other country's currency. I don't want to go into the detail. I think we've mentioned it in the last episode, a few episodes ago, why that is. But that is normally the case. Now, interesting, and that then tends to soften the blow just a little bit. Interestingly, this hasn't happened this time round. This time round, the dollar has weakened against other currencies. And this is odd a little bit, but it also highlights something else. This is so severe, so sudden. We saw it coming, but that's not sudden, but the implementation of it is from one day to the next. And the rationale behind it is so obviously and transparently stupid. Sorry, I'm going to use this word now. Intellectually impoverished. Everybody sees this now. And that means that people are losing faith in the US as a place to do business, as a place to invest money. This goes back to our comments last episode, where we discussed whether the United States is going to become uninvestable. Investors are taking flight. There is skepticism about the US as a place to do business in the future, and that is why the dollar has weakened. Dollar weakening on top of tariffs, however, means that now the blow is not even moderately cushioned. Now the blow is being amplified by the fact that the dollar has just depreciated against other countries. And now, therefore, imports are going to be even more expensive than they are already because of the tariffs. Excuse me. And that is the reason why lots of market observers, investment banks, but also I think the Federal Reserve Bank has already said it. That's the reason why market observers are now penciling in a meaningful probability that there will be a recession in the United States. And that is a recession which comes basically a few months after Biden handing over an economy to Donald Trump, which was doing okay. I wouldn't say it was a fantastic economy, but it was certainly an economy where you had growth, underlying growth, and falling inflation. Now you have stalling growth and increasing inflation. And these two things are a direct consequence of the tariffs, which was an unforced policy implementation driven by Donald Trump's grievances against a perceived stance from other countries to take advantage of the United States.
I mean, I think that the thing I wanted to, sort of ask as well, though, is if this is so bad, when is everyone going to realise that it's a bad idea? Now, I mean, I would suggest that it's going to be pretty soon, because it's going to hit them with the grocery shop. Because, you hear about, like, I don't know, avocados from Mexico and, well, just basically fruit and veg from Mexico. Suddenly that's going to be way more expensive. And I think that's the most immediate thing that everyone's going to realise. And maybe, at first they'll go, oh, this is a bit of a shock. But then week in, week out, you realise that you've not got any money left. That is it's not going to take long before they realise. And you sort of think, would even fervent Trump supporters think, hold on a minute, isn't this bad? I mean, how long do you think it will be?
Well, I don't know, but to continue with your last point, Fervent Trump supporters may not think that. But those people who were leaning towards Trump, perhaps because they didn't want to vote Democrats, like if you remember in our country, we voted Boris Johnson because we didn't want Jeremy Corbyn, that sort of thing. So they might have voted Trump because they didn't want the Democrats for different reasons, for various reasons. So these kind of people who were swinging towards Trump, well, they may now swing back very easily. So these are the soft targets. And then there are, of course, lots of other voters who might now think, well, this is going to be a clear and present danger to our wealth and prosperity, which might well be sustainable. Now, you mentioned the grocery shop, but of course it is going to be everywhere, not just there. I agree with you. I mean, that is where people might feel it first, but then people might feel it next when they need a new car, back to the cars, which are now pretty much unaffordable. And let's not make the mistake to be too simplistic here. We might say, yeah, but then don't buy a BMW then. Buy a Cadillac or something. Buy an American car. After all, that's exactly the reason behind the tariffs. The rationale is to strengthen the domestic industry. Yeah, but what do we think is going to happen? So the entire demand for cars is now going to focus on just American cars. What do you think prices are going to do to domestic cars? Because that's also a time-honored impact which tariffs have. It's not just the artificially increased price on the imported goods, which is of course visible. It is a commensurate of, it's a consequence of this, that the price of the substitute goods, which are the American cars in this case, are going to rise. We've seen this several years ago, when Trump levied sizable tariffs on washing machines. It wasn't just Samsung washing machines which rose in price, it was everything which rose in price. And so basically you can't run anywhere. That's the impact. The secondary impact is inflation is going to rise. So what is the Fed going to do? Is the Fed going to increase interest rates in order to stave off inflation, which is the normal monetary response? Well, if they did that, then your mortgage costs would increase and the cost of your household debt would increase. America holds still a huge amount of household debt, much higher than the non-UK European countries. And we still remember the last financial crisis. So is there something looming which is akin to the last financial crisis? I don't think so. Probably not. But why not? Because the Fed may not raise interest rates. They may see themselves forced to lower interest rates instead, because they want to inject fuel into a stalling economy. The risk of recession is now real, and so they might do that instead. But what are we going to have as a consequence? Then we have stagflation. Inflation is still high, but the economy is not growing. And so to your question then, when is it going to happen? That I don't know. But because the economic impact is going to be immediate. The secondary impact to the economy takes some time to filter through, but the response time which people have, before people actually muster a potent response to it, but that will take longer. But it is not the people, it's not we the people, it's not the American citizens who are going to be the driver. It is going to be the opposition politicians, Democrats. They have to do something. And so, in short, I think the first time that we might actually see something in a response visible in numbers is going to be at the midterms. We have already seen something in the territory of Wisconsin. There was a strange election, and that swung towards
the
it
Supreme
didn't
Court
swing. It increased the vote share of the incumbent Democrat there. But
I mean that was interesting in itself. That was interesting in itself, wasn't it? $25 million into that campaign from Elon Musk, and
Yes.
he still lost.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's quite amazing. Quite amazing.
So we see some rumblings perhaps already now. So my money is perhaps on the midterms.
Yeah.
Not that I see them as a silver bullet or a savior, but I think that any fallout from this is probably going to find a political representation or a voting representation at the midterms. One other thing which we have to remember, though, Trump is an erratic person. He has sold his success by reference to the observation of certain metrics. I said it last time, and one of these metrics are the stock markets. Now, the stock markets have not done well, obviously, and I do not believe the sell-off is done yet. But it is possible that he reverts from this at some point if the economic fallout is accelerating. But also, he cannot revert from it just tomorrow, because this was announced with so much fanfare. And this is Liberation Day. This has a word, this is Liberation Day. This is a cornerstone of his philosophy, if you can call it that, of his thinking, of his entire self-worth or perception as a human being, as a politician. I think it will take a lot for him to revert from this, although, and this is the last comment which I'm making on this, I do not believe in the end that this is going to be permanent. I think these tariffs will be reverted, and the bond markets are kind of telling you that they will, because the 10-year has gone up a lot as people are reverting out of equity into safe havens. But so maybe midterms. I'm copping out of this. I don't know the answer, but I'm guessing midterms.
I reckon it'll be before that. I think it'll be before that. I think it'll be so widespread, people are going to they're going to go crazy about this, and I think it will happen before that. And then this will be a gift for the opposition. The opposition would say, look, as you said, we handed them this economy which was going in the right direction. Now look what's happening. Have you how are your household finances doing? And they can just, there's so many ways to attack. And I do also wonder, sorry, I'm going to have to go, but I do also wonder, actually, I wonder whether he will start talking more about Bitcoin. If things start to go worse, he'll start talking about Bitcoin to take the attention away and put it onto something else, before he then has to potentially go back on it. Anyway,
I think what he might talk about, and this is what I want to end on, are the poor colony of penguins in the Antarctic. What do you think is going to happen there? Are they going to rise up? Is there anything going on?
No, I don't know. I'll tell you what, you want to send JD Vance and his wife over, don't you? So that's I mean, they've already got the gear, right? I mean, they've got the coats, they got the coats and stuff for going over to Greenland. So maybe an extra layer or something, and they should be jobs are good.
One of these Norwegian islands, which are also completely desolate and uninhabited, is very close to Greenland. Maybe there's a connection.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Well, on that note, on that warm note, I think we'll end it today. But thank you very much indeed. Obviously, Ralph, as everyone knows, sitting on the fence, you'd never know what he's thinking. So anyway, so it's good. But thank you very much, and thank you also for that fantastic jumper as well. So have a great day. Bye.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you. Bye bye.